This is the FightWedge version 2. What's new and improved about it? Let's find out. If you've seen my video review on this guy, the older version, you know that this controller is actually 3D printed, designed and made by one guy. And it's the same here. It's made by one person only, which is super cool. So I reviewed this guy, and in that review, there's some feedback. And a lot of my feedback made it into this controller. Alright, so this is 3D printed, but it is very well made. You get 6 face buttons. These are all keyboard switches, they're linear. And you get 4 shoulder buttons. And you have a desk here that slides around. Instead of having 3 menu buttons here, now you have 4. And these are a lot smaller and they're kind of recessed. So it's going to be harder for you to accidentally press them. And you also have a little screen here. Check this out. So whenever I press a button, it lights up. Same thing with the stick. So having this feedback is great so that you know where the angle is, right? This is fantastic. And then you also notice that there is an extra USB port here, USB-A. Now one thing I will say about this extra USB port is it kind of sticks out a little bit. Is there a way for us to make it flushed with the controller? And this USB-A port is actually used for authenticating for the PS5. I was told that what you're gonna need is a Mayflash Magic Boot dongle, and you can use that so it doesn't time out after 8 minutes. Unfortunately, I don't have that dongle, so I can't tell you if it works or not. If I do decide to get the Magic Boots dongle, I'll do an update on it. But I've tried plugging this straight into the PS5, and sure enough, it times out after 8 minutes. I've also tried to use the FGC converter here, and unfortunately, it doesn't work. Alright, let's get into how this guy plays. Alright, let's start with the face buttons. You see there's 6 buttons here, so this controller is designed for 6 button fighters. These buttons are great for Street Fighter 6 obviously, and because this is a classic shape, kind of like a Super Nintendo shape, right? There's no handle or anything. You can play claw very easily with this. These guys are nice and big. They're essentially as big as my fingernail. The top ones are textured, and then the bottom ones are smooth. And as I said before, these are linear keyboard switches. There's a lot of travel to them. It's just super satisfying to press on these. And if you don't like playing claw, and I'm in that camp, I prefer to use my controller like this. It's gonna take you some time to get used to this layout, right? Because these 4 buttons here are not in a diamond shape. So for example, if you're used to something like this, where square is directly to the left of circle, and then X is directly below triangle. You see how these 4 buttons are off-centered? So you gotta get used to that. But after a while, it shouldn't be a problem. The only thing I'll say actually about this that maybe perhaps can be improved on is because these buttons are so big, and if you look at the space in between here, there's not a lot of space, particularly between these buttons here and these buttons here. You see there's some more space here, but then the space between these buttons are a lot closer, right? And like I said, I don't use the claw grip. I don't like using this, it's uncomfortable for me. So I use my thumb to press these buttons. What tends to happen sometimes is when I press the middle buttons, my thumb would accidentally hit these buttons, right? Because there's no room. I know the controller itself is pretty small, so the solution may be to make these buttons a little bit smaller. When my thumb's on here, you can see when I press it down, there's barely any room. If you're a little bit off-center, you may accidentally press the other button. But overall, I really love the feel of these guys. They're fantastic. Alright, moving on to the shoulder buttons, and you're gonna notice something here compared to the old one. You see the new one here is a tad longer. This way it'll be easier for you to reach it, right? These shoulder buttons use the same switches as these face buttons, and these buttons have a lot of travel as well. Look at that. Now let's get over to the disc. With the first one, I had trouble with the timing between this disc and the buttons. By sliding this thing back and forth, it makes it slower than just the press of a button, right? So oftentimes I would have to make sure that I activate the slider first before I press the button. If you use a regular controller, just press them at the same time to activate a direction and a button. And with this new version, it's kind of the same thing. And I think that's because of the inherent design of the slider mechanism. The fact that you have to slide this disc around is gonna be slower than just pressing the button right away, right? As you can see here, 3 times, my action button comes out before the direction. My action button before the direction. However, I have to say this, in this new version, this is improved in a couple of ways. You can see that the new one is a lot smaller. Maybe this is kind of hard to see. The disc itself is raised up a little bit so that way you can slide it against the faceplate a lot smoother. Now you would think that because it is a slider, that's going to be great for motion inputs, right? I'll check this out. So my action input, the throw button, comes out before the last direction comes out. So he missed it. So you gotta make sure that you complete the whole half circle before you press the throw button. There we go. In terms of cardinal directions, this is pretty accurate. The Agatos have these square gates to help it out, as you can see. When you want to do down forward, for example, and then you're not perfectly right, but if you keep going, it's gonna just slide right into place. And also this disc, it spins around. You don't have to slide your hand around the D-pad or the disc. The disc slide with your thumb. You see that? There you go, it just goes with your thumb, which is really cool. And as I was reviewing this controller right here, the first version, I kept on wishing that this thing was a regular D-pad. How cool would that be? That way one button press of the D-pad is also the same in terms of the timing as one button press on the face button. Well, what do you know? In this controller, it also comes with a D-pad. Comes with a little screwdriver here, so you can take the slider out. And there's 3 screws that you need to take out. This guy, and this guy. So let's do that right now. Here are the D-pad switches. And these are actually clicky switches. Alright, let's put our D-pad on. And here's our D-pad. How freaking cool is this? With the slider, when you push forward, the forward switch is going to activate. But with the D-pad, if you press back, it's going to push forward. You can even see it here. Look. I push back, forward happens. I push up, down happens. That's because of the tilt of the little stick underneath. So how do we fix that? You gotta go to this website right here, press and hold start, and then X and Y for like 5 seconds. Alright, then you're gonna see the screen right here. So it says right here, R2, pin viewer. You press R2. And here, whatever button that you press, it's gonna tell you the pin. Right, so for example, if I press A, button 1, pin 6. And this is button 2, pin 7. What you're gonna do now, let's go back to the web page, click this link. It's gonna open up this menu here. Go to configuration, go to pin mapping. This is how you're gonna remap your buttons. Now with the D-pad, when you press back, it says that's pin number 4, right? So I'm gonna go to pin number 4. Right now it says right. We need to change it to left, right? So cancel it out, select left. It's gonna be up, and up's gonna be down. If you do decide to get this controller and you wanna remap things, this pin viewer here is gonna help a whole bunch. I'm gonna press save, and I'm gonna reboot the controller. All right, controller's rebooting. Now I'm gonna press back. What do you know, it's back. Let's boot up the game and talk about it. Now look at this, everything on the D-pad is just so much faster than on the slider. In terms of motion inputs, you would think that this D-pad is worse at motion input than this one, right? But actually that's not true. I would argue that this is better because it is faster. Look at that. I can do all of my combos so much faster on this D-pad. Oh yeah, look at that. Everything from cardinal directions to motion inputs, it's just so much more accurate and faster with the D-pad. And because this D-pad still spins, you can do double quarter circles so quickly on this. You see how it rotates with your thumb? This way your skin won't grind against the D-pad, right? It just goes with you. I love this. The only thing about this D-pad that I had to get adjusted to is when I have to do up back or up forward. You see how I'm trying to do up forward, but he's walking back. And this is where it's really valuable to look at the little screen. I'm trying to press up forward, but it goes forward. That means I'm not pressing it up enough. So you gotta go like this. See, now he's going up. With a regular controller, I can press both buttons at the same time and I know it's gonna activate. But with the disc like this, it's kind of hard to tell where to press, right? And what angle to press. And unlike the slider, it's got a square gate. Not sure if you can see, but this thing is not squared off, right? It's rounded. So I wonder with the D-pad here, if having a square gate, I wonder if that will help. Cardinal directions on this D-pad is good for the most part after you get adjusted to it. But let me tell you, motion inputs on this guy is just second to none. This is so good. Oh, you can do the double 360 as well. You can use your thumb and slide around the edges, or you can also put your thumb in the middle, right? And then just rotate it like this. For half circles and 360, I recommend you putting your thumb in the middle and just kind of rotate it like this. It's faster than sliding it all around. But for quarter circle movements or double quarter circle movements, then doing this is great. Sliding motions. Look at that, I did a double slide motion, no problem at all. Alright, final thoughts. Honestly, if you get this controller, instead of using the slider, switch it out to the D-pad. Reprogram it, and this is going to be one of the best controllers for fighting games that you can get. Particularly if you play Street Fighter 6 or 2D fighters, this is perfect. If you play 3D fighters, something like DOA 6 or Tekken, then the D-pad is not as accurate in terms of cardinal directions. But after getting used to it, it's still pretty good. You can get controllers from big companies like Sony or Microsoft, right? Or even Razer. Or you can get something that's made by one person. It's unique and different. I mean, it's 3D printed. And with the addition of the D-pad, it works great now. And honestly, this is just so much more fun to use than something like this. So if you're a PC player and you play a lot of Street Fighter 6, this is a no-brainer to me. Alright, hopefully you enjoyed the video and find it to be helpful. If you did, give it a like, subscribe for more, and take care now.